Hello friends and welcome to 2025. Today is January 4th, so we're already a few days into the new year. This is my first YouTube of the year, and as I move forward on this channel, I'm hoping to discuss a little bit more about my writing projects, what I'm working on, what I plan to work on, just basically the nitty-gritty details of life as a writer full-time now that I've retired from my day job, which happened last year at this point. I retired at the end of March 2024, so March of this year will be my 1-year anniversary of being retired. And my goal last year basically was to find my footing again, because retirement, it was a surprise. I had not planned to retire until next year, 2026. So 2024 retirement became as a complete surprise. Welcome surprise, and I'm very happy in my life right now. I was dealing with some health issues, which I'm still working on. As I've mentioned previously, this is something we all deal with no matter what our age, but I'm starting to feel a little bit more like myself again, getting better sleep at night, working on eating better, getting a little bit more exercise. You know, the aches and pains are still there, but working them out, and not having to deal with the 8 to 5 every day helps, because then I can adapt my day to how I'm feeling. So that's pretty much how 2024 went. JT and I did a lot of traveling. We traveled cross country, and we also traveled up to British Columbia. So we took 2 big trips. We drove pretty much the length of California, not all at once, but we did not go to the border with Mexico. We were just north of San Diego. But at one point we ended up driving almost all of I-5. So anybody who's familiar with the West Coast and with I-5 will understand what that entails. I-5 is not my favorite road. So that was quite the adventure. A lot of pretty countryside, a lot of pretty scenery, seeing some historic places. That was a lot of fun. So 24 was a good year all around. And while I do miss my previous job and my coworkers, I do go visit them because we live pretty close to where I used to work, at the Nevada State Archives. So it's nice to be able to drop in on them and say hi and answer any questions they might have, because my position dealt with a lot of the records going into the archives, and it was pretty challenging and pretty stressful. So that probably factored into my health problems, because I don't handle stress well. So 2024 is now in the rearview mirror, and we're looking at 2025, a fresh new year. And I have plans. Obviously, JT and I both have plans, and we do discuss that on our weekly podcast, which we will be recording tomorrow morning as usual. We will be discussing 2 more books and our plans moving forward in 2025 with that. But here I want to talk a little bit more about my personal plans, because with our company, it's an umbrella for the projects that JT and I do as individuals, because he's writing solo projects and I'm writing solo projects. We may do more occasional joint projects, like From Tundra to Tiara, and I do look forward to doing that because I really enjoyed that experience. And that is something I may talk about in more detail in the future. But right now, what I'm working on, I'm actually made notes, so I have a little bit of a script to work off of today. I'm trying to be a little bit more organized. So as you can see, I'm in I call this my upstairs office, because we do have a rather large house for 2 people. When we bought the house, we had one of our kids still living at home with us. And since we do have 3 kids and a couple of grandkids, we like to have the extra room in case anybody wants to visit. But when it's not being used as a guest space, these extra rooms can also be used for workspace. So this is my cheerful, sunny upstairs office, which is perfect for a winter day. We've got sunshine after a gloomy day yesterday. And I came up here, sat down, and was thinking about my work in progress. So I am currently on, I think the 2nd or 3rd round of edits of what I'm calling my Virginia City Ghost book. Obviously, I do have an actual title for the book that I will do reveal on later as the book is closer to being released. But in the meantime, I'm working through edits. This is a book I started probably a decade ago and set aside because I was busy with my day job and kind of lost the ability to be able to work 8 hours and come home and get any writing done. So I revisited the book. I felt that it could fit in with a series that I'm planning to release in the next few years. And the series will be called Restless Spirits. It will be paranormal romances with many of the same characters dealing with various aspects of the paranormal in various locations. The first book, as I said, is set in Virginia City. There are a few scenes that take place outside of Nevada, but the bulk of the book is in Virginia City. And being a history nerd, the paranormal aspect also adds a little bit of a historic element because I'm dealing with two timelines, the timeline of the spirits and the timeline of the modern day couple. So that can be a little bit challenging because I'm trying to make sure the two timelines make sense, and that I actually have printed out calendars for both of these timelines because I have a very specific time period and in mind for what is happening in the book, and they do deal with some actual historic events, so it will have little bits and pieces of history dropped in there. It's not completely fiction. So the book itself, and I'm already off track going off on a tangent. So the book itself, I'm working through the second or third round of edits, and I'm planning, or JT and I are planning, we've already booked a room up in Virginia City for this coming week. So I'll be taking everyone along. I'm going to do some filming while we're up there. But the idea is that I want to walk around a little bit, make sure I'm getting everything right. We live about a half an hour from Virginia City, so we are fairly familiar with it. And it's just not something that we deal with on a daily basis. So I want to make sure I get things right, certain details, including things like, when does the sun set in winter? Virginia City is set on the eastern side of Mount Davidson, and the sun tends to go down or set behind the mountain earlier than you would expect. For example, if you're in California, the sun sets when it hits the ocean if you're, on the west side of the Coast Range. But otherwise, the sunset is probably later than it would be here in Nevada. And even in the difference between West Carson City and East Carson City, sunsets can be quite dramatic because on the west side of town, you're nestled up against the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, and that makes the sunset feel much earlier than it actually is. It stays light, but there is that gloom there in the afternoon. So part of the reason we want to spend the night up there is I want to see at this time of year exactly when the sun looks like it has set behind Mount Davidson. We will be visiting the Silver Terrace Cemetery up there because obviously as a paranormal, that may factor into the story. I want to get a feel for the walking on the boardwalks, how things smell, because the area is surrounded with sagebrush and a lot of dirt and open spaces, and it does have a very particular smell to it, including the smell of the older buildings. And that's why we are staying in an older hotel, and I'll talk more about that when I do the video about our trip to Virginia City. That will probably be next week's video. So you have that to look forward to, but for the time being, we're going to do that trip. I'm going to wrap up some final sensory details that I want to include in the book, make sure everything makes sense, and then that manuscript will be ready to go off to beta readers. So I'm not sure how many people will read it. JT for sure would like to do a read, and I may put a call out to see if anybody else would be interested in checking out the book, to let me know what they think. I'm hoping to have at least one person I used to work with read over it to catch any historic mistakes I might have made. And then once it goes through beta reads, it will be going to the editorial service. We are using Red Adept editing, which JT has been using for many of his books. He feels very comfortable with them. And they have an editorial calendar. So it's a period of probably 6 weeks, I would say, that the editing process takes, because it goes through copy edits, it goes through line edits, it goes through proofing, and it goes through a macro that finds punctuation mistakes to make sure that everything is clean. And with all that being said, no matter how many people edit a book, how many people proofread a book, things always get through. So I'm not expecting perfection. I want to get it as close as I can to hopefully avoid the big errors that will stop readers in their tracks. And then, of course, while it's in the editing process, I can move on to another project, but I will also be working on cover design for the book. I do have a cover in mind for this series. As I mentioned, this should be book 1 of the Restless Spirits series. I plan a 6-book series at this point. The second and third book are partially written already, so I'm hoping, I don't know if either of those will be released this year, but one of them is close enough that I may be able to do a second release this year. I'm just not sure which book I would like to be the second in the series, and there will be carryover of characters from book to book. So I want to make sure that the timeline of these characters is consistent across the book. So writing these books as a series, a planned series in advance, is a whole new challenge for me. And I want to make sure I do it correctly, because I'm hoping that people will enjoy this. And I know I'm enjoying writing it. It's taking me a little bit longer than I had hoped it would, but I feel that I will get back into a rhythm. And once I have the framework of the series set up, I'm hoping writing the rest of the series will go much quicker than this first book has. And as I said kind of in the beginning of this discussion about the book, it is one that I'm revisiting that I wrote a decade ago. So it was like starting with somebody else's book, because I had vague memories of what I had written, but the book itself was almost a whole new experience to me. So that is the Virginia City Ghost book. And, I'm hoping for a release in mid-2025, but I will keep you updated here as this progresses, because I am always curious about the timelines of writers, especially independent authors, when they're releasing their books, and how they determine their timelines. So I'm hoping that if you are following along with me and you're in the same boat where you're not sure how to determine an appropriate timeline for a release based on your personal writing schedule, because it's all very individual. And I think even well-known writers who've been writing for many, many years can have hiccups that will change their release schedule. So I'm hoping that if you follow along with me on this experience, you'll learn a little bit more about how to individualize your writing experience. Because over the years, I've been writing my entire adult life, and over the years I've read many books on writing, and I used to write much faster, but I was writing more, you might call it fan fiction, because I was writing things based on the Star Trek universe and based on the Quantum Leap universe. And I've briefly discussed those things in the past. I can discuss them again in the future, but based on that, I had a really good feeling for the characters and a lot of the details of those universes. So writing the stories was very easy. Creating something completely from scratch out of whole cloth is a totally different experience, and I want to make sure I do it justice. I would love if someday somebody enjoyed my universe enough to be able to write fan fiction of it. I'm not counting on that ever happening, but if it did, I'd like to have a lot of the details in place that would make it easier for them, because it is fun to write about stories that you enjoy, to write offshoots of stories that you enjoy. I personally am in favor of fan fiction. I think a lot of writers, a lot of well-known writers have actually gotten their start writing fan fiction. So I am not against it at all. And I think fan fiction is a great community building experience. So I want to create a universe that hopefully someday, if people pick up on it and enjoy it, they can write in that universe and have some very specific details to either work from or to work against, because that can also be fun. So, with all that being said, I am long-winded, and that's something I'm working on in my writing. But my other project for this year is a book I'm calling Battleborn Bride. Now, I intended this book to be a historical romance, and I do plan to keep elements of romance in it, but I'm thinking I might go more historical fiction and have romance be an offshoot of the story, because this is something that I started thinking about while working at my job before I retired. And I have been planning this book for many years based on some of the things I learned about Nevada history, and in particular Carson City history, that I found fascinating. Carson City is a kind of an untapped resource. People have written about it, including Mark Twain. And Mark Twain will factor into my historical book. But there is still a lot of detail about Carson City to be explored and shared. And I would like to do that. And again, I want to do it justice. So I'm hoping, based on my ability to write quickly, I may be overextending myself, but I'm hoping to be able to complete this book to release it on Nevada Day of this year, which is October 31st. That would be that is Nevada's admission day during the Civil War. We were admitted to the country on October 31st, 1864, and that information will factor into this historical fiction book. So I want to hopefully release that on Nevada Day. If not this year, if it takes me longer, it may be Nevada Day 2026. So whether or not I release that book this year is up in the air. I'm hopeful. If not, I may release a second book in the Restless Spirits series this year instead, depending on the timeline. So again, if you'd like to follow along and see how that plays out, this could be a very interesting year for me personally, juggling that with the creation of our company, 2 more books, because we do have some big plans for our company as well. And, you know, in my 60s, I'm not as energetic as I used to be. I'm getting my energy back, but I don't think I'll ever have the same amount of stamina I did in my 20s. And there is a lot to do as a retired person, because I mean, we call this jokingly our retirement career, but it is a career. We are starting an LLC so that our company will have that feeling of legitimacy. And we both plan to continue writing and publishing while working on our company. So that in itself is a lot. But I'd like to do other things too, because part of retirement is enjoying things, hobbies that you didn't have time for when you were younger, when you were busy with family and, you know, your job and school and all those other things that go into day-to-day life. So not only do I like to write, I also like to draw and paint, so I'd like to do some of that. I do have a nice camera, so I'd like to play around more with photography. I played the violin in elementary and high school, and I'd like to get back to that. So I have a violin and a guitar that I hope to spend some time practicing. I got myself a pair of tap shoes a few years ago, so maybe play around with a little tap dancing here and there. I want to get back to swimming for sure to help build up my energy and my stamina and help my health. And then I enjoy sewing and crafting. So you can see, you know, I don't know how I ever had time for a day job with all my interests. And I find it amazing that I'm in this place in my life where we are at the moment able to financially just work on our company, on our writing, and any other pursuits we might want to enjoy in the meantime. So that was a little bit rambling. I did, even though I'd scripted it. I hope you made sense of some of the things I talked about. I'll try to be a little bit more coherent in future videos, but I hope you'll follow along on this adventure as I get back into life as a full-time writer, a full-time business partner, and a very creative person who wants to do a lot. And I'm hoping that you are also finding fun and exciting things to do. 2025 could be a difficult year for many of us here in the United States, depending on your beliefs and your view of the world. So if you are having a difficult time, I hope you will do something like I'm doing and try to find something you enjoy to do every day. That's my goal for 2025. I haven't made any resolutions. I just want to do one thing I enjoy each day. And I hope you will follow along and maybe do that for yourself as well. Could be as simple as picking up a book and reading for half an hour, if nothing else. Anyway, Happy New Year, happy 2025, and stay tuned because we've got a lot more content coming up. Take care.